All right, and at this point, we're going to call the October 3rd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting to order. We're going to start with attendance. Commissioner Brummond is here. Commissioner Hargreaves.
Here.
Commissioner Kozicki.
Here.
Commissioner Lind.
Here.
And Commissioner Yang.
Here.
And at this time, I'd like to invite members of the public to join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this time, I'd like to ask staff or the commissioners if there are any amendments that someone would like to make to tonight's agenda. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion. No.
Oh, no, I was just.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? On that note, really quick, is it helpful for us if we state our names when we're saying who is making a motion or no?
Not at this time.
Perfect.
Our planner is the one doing the minutes. They're doing that at city council because we have a new city clerk.
Gotcha, okay. And at this point in time, what I'd like to do is open the floor to the members of the public who are here. This public comment, well, we call it open forum. What this is if you have something you would like to bring up before the Planning Commission that is not on tonight's agenda, but something you wanted to bring forth as something to our attention for members of the commission to consider. I just want to go over the rules of decorum before we get started, and that is just so that we have the opportunity to show respect for one another and for the process. So if at all tonight you do want to make a public comment opportunity, whether it's open forum or during our planning agenda item, I just want to remind you that open forum is an opportunity to be heard, but not to debate an issue. There will be people who are recognized by the chair, but anybody else should refrain from commenting, interrupting a speaker at the podium, or conducting conversations with members of the audience, just because it does make it disruptive, chatting back and forth in the audience. And we want to make sure that the members of the commission, the employees, and the speakers at the podium are just given the respect that they deserve. This will be enforced throughout the meeting, and those who don't abide by the rules of decorum will just be asked to leave. We will remind you. We're not going to just ask you to leave. And then the last piece of business is that comments are limited just to in-person participants. We don't take comments over Zoom any longer. So if there's nobody who wants to address the members of the commission with an open forum issue, then we will move on to approving our minutes. Does anyone want to talk about the September Planning Commission meeting minutes? Formally on record, do you want to make the correction?
Yeah, just one edit would be to note that there were 3 planning commissioners present in the meeting versus the 5 that's stated in the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so if we make a note that that number is corrected, it's like in the first sentence from 5 commissioners, second sentence, 5 to 3, then I will entertain a motion to approve the September 5th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do I have someone willing to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
And I will second, because I was there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. And now we're going to move on to tonight's new business, which is going to begin. The public hearing and the new business is regarding the 3019 edition preliminary plat rezoning and comprehensive plan amendment, which is City File 23-027. And we're going to begin with a staff report from Kevin Shea.
Thank you, Chair. Some Chair and members of the Commission, before you tonight is a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, and preliminary plat for what is considered the 3019 edition. So I'll go through what each of those applications are for. So the comprehensive plan amendment is to reclassify from rural ag residential to rural service commercial. And it's not to reclassify the entire property, but to essentially adjust where the boundary is between those two existing land uses on the property. Associated with that then is the rezoning from rural residential to rural commercial, and then also transitional rural commercial to rural commercial. So this would be for the portion that is rural residential with the land use request for the comprehensive plan amendment would then go to rural commercial. And I'll go into transitional rural commercial as a holding zone district to wait for when development happens, and then it gets rezoned to rural commercial. And the last one is a preliminary plat to create 4 residential lots and 15 commercial lots. So to give you a little background on the property, I know it's kind of small because I included the entire land use map in there, but we're in the northwest corner of the city. The property is 66 acres, and right now it's currently split down the middle between the 2 land uses, being the ag residential land uses. So it's guided rural service commercial today and zoned transitional rural commercial on the west portion, the red portion. And then on the east portion, it's guided rural ag residential and zoned rural residential on that eastern portion, which is the almost white color. The property as it sits today is part of the non-MUSA boundary area, so it's part of the development rights program, which grants 1 development right per 10 acres. So this property has 7 development rights given its size of 66 acres. I want to include the bigger image here. So that's where it was on the northwest corner. I'm going to go over just some quick background on this application previously. So there wasn't a concept plan submitted on January 24th, 2024. And that was to review the concept and the development rights program. Council directed staff at that time to review the development rights program, and it came back to council. There was an interim ordinance put in place so that staff could study the development rights program. On August 22nd, 2024, council updated the zoning ordinance to clarify development rights and retain the program. So what that did essentially was amend the ordinance to clarify, in this case, the difference between residential and commercial and how it applied to the development rights program. But the number of development rights did not change. So with that, this site does have 7 development rights. With the proposed 19 lots, that does exceed the number of development rights for the property. So they're proposing 4 residential and 15 commercial, where only 7 lots would be allowed under the development rights program. And commercial and residential lots both use development rights. So a commercial lot uses 1 development right, a residential lot uses 1 development right. There is no difference between the usage of that development right. Only that in this case, the property would only be allowed to have 7. So with the comprehensive plan amendment, the commission's, I always put this on here because of the difference between applications. So comprehensive plan amendment from the city's perspective is a high level of discretion, meaning there's a lot of leeway to use when reviewing the application. It's not as cut and dry as a preliminary plat, let's say, which is basically meet these conditions. If you do, we have to approve it kind of thing. Whereas the comprehensive plan amendment, there's a lot of other factors in play. So this comprehensive plan amendment would adjust the portion of the site guided rural ag residential to be approximately 15.4 acres in area. That is a decrease in the rural area and an increase then in the commercial area. So the comprehensive plan amendment would guide the land to allow essentially, by having 15.4 acres of it be rural ag residential, you would then assign 2 development rights, because you round up, to the residential portion, and 5 development rights to the commercial lots. And so with that, the development proposal connected to the land use guide plan amendment does not comply with city code standards and cannot be approved because there's more development rights trying to be used by creating 4 residential lots and 15 commercial lots versus the 2 and 5 that would be allowed. The rezoning request is related to that, so whenever you do a land use or a guide plan amendment, you rezone the properties to be consistent with those underlying land uses. So the rezoning the TCR property or the transitional commercial rural to rural commercial would then shift the line between the commercial rural and the rural residential district to align with those land uses as they shift the boundary. So that's why the request for the rezoning. It's a pretty standard practice for the transitional commercial rural to be rezoned to rural commercial because transitional rural commercial is a holding zone essentially until development happens. So with any development of a property, that request would come in essentially to rezone to rural commercial. So as you see on the map here, it's transitional rural commercial on the west half and it's rural residential on the right half, or the east and west. So the proposed plat is 4 residential lots ranging from 3.01 to 4.65 acres. The residential lots are on that right side of the image or the east side of the property. That's those 4 residential lots. The 15 commercial lots range from 2.5 to 4.72 acres, and that's everything west of the street that goes north and south. And so those are all proposed commercial lots. They are larger lot sizes for a plat, and do comply, like, larger lot sizes for a plat that complies would be expected when you have reduced development rights. So if there are only 7 lots on the property, there'd be larger lot sizes. No development is proposed at this time, so these are all just building pads with, the associated septic sites shown on there, but no development at this time. So it's essentially to put in the improvements in place to make it development ready without actually developing the individual parcels or lots. Just to note that site plan review would be required prior to development of lots, with that coming forward as each individual lot were to be developed. So the preliminary plat does not comply with ordinance standards just because it exceeds those development rights again. So uses, the residential lots are planned to be used for single family, so there's 4 of those shown. The commercial lots, because there's no defined use at this point, it's just expected user, which is office and warehouse uses. For utilities for the site, this site is located outside of the MUSA, the Municipal Urban Service Area, so it will be served with well and septic, which they did show on the plat. The preliminary and secondary septic sites shown on a plat, which is required by Hennepin County to show those on a plat drawing. For parking, the plans show 14 parking spaces per commercial lot. Depending on employees, at least 15 would be required for most commercial lots, so there is concerns with parking conflicting with some of those septic areas. But again, that's something you typically would work through when you have a site development plan that would know the exact parking counts that would be associated with it, along with some locations of the septic sites. Access for this was proposed off of what's called Street A, which is the road that connects to County Road 30 on the south side of the site in the southeast corner. Then there's Streets B and C, which are offshoots from Street A, but those would be internal roads that would provide access. With this project, initially there was a feasibility study that was done, and it warranted an eastbound left turn lane and westbound right turn lane are required through that feasibility study for that access onto County Road 30. As far as trail and sidewalks go, there is an on-road from the comprehensive plan. There's an on-road trail shown on County Road 30. There's also off-road trails shown on both the north and east lot lines, so that north boundary and the east boundary. So plans for this development would need to be revised to show a 20-foot trail easement for the off-road trails as shown in the comprehensive plan. So that would just shift some of the potential landscaping and things like that would be in those areas. There was a landscaping shown, buffer provided on the north and the west lot lines, so the north and then the west on County Road 19, along with additional landscaping shown for a reduced buffer on the south lot line. And then additionally, all the base landscape requirements are met. So the landscape plan is good in terms of ordinance standards for providing the required buffers and the setbacks for those buffers, along with the base landscape requirements as well. So with that, I just kind of went through everything really high level from what's in the staff packet. But staff does recommend that the Planning Commission move to recommend approval of the draft resolution denying the request. So there is only one draft resolution before you that would handle all 3 applications, or all 3 applications from the applicant. So with that, I'll stand for any questions from staff. Otherwise, you can move into the public hearing portion.
The only question that I have for point of clarification is that each additional, because you said there are 3, the comprehensive plan amendment, the rezoning, and the preliminary plat, and they are each conditional upon the approval of the larger umbrella, is that correct?
Correct, so you'd
Okay.
only need to make one motion if you were to follow the resolution that's before you in the draft form.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, and at this point in time, we are going to open the public hearing. So this is going to be the opportunity for you to make comments and ask questions regarding this this point of business or this application. Just a reminder that public comments are limited to in-person comments. Speakers that have filled out a card at the start are going to be given priority, and then Natalie will call you up to the podium when it's your turn. Anyone who didn't fill out a comment card will have the opportunity to approach the podium. We're just going to do it in that order first. I just want to do a reminder that, or give a reminder, not do a reminder, give a reminder that we are going to enforce a 5-minute timeline. 5-minute time frame, thanks. So when you come up to the podium, we won't I'm not gonna set a timer, but we'll just kind of watch it, and then I'll try to give you like a nod or something if we're getting close to that 5 minutes. And then if you do have a question, because I want to let you know how we would handle those, we wouldn't engage in a back and forth during the public hearing, because it's your opportunity to make comment, but we will make note of all of the questions, and then once we close the public hearing, then we'll address any specific questions that were brought up. Does that make sense? Okay. So Natalie, who do we have first?
The card that I have is for Aaron Dean.
And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, if you could just state your name and address when you come up to the microphone, then that's helpful for our planner who does the meeting minutes. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the commission. My name is Aaron Dean. I'm a construction and real estate lawyer at Moss & Barnett in downtown Minneapolis. I have the privilege of representing Craig Scherber and his company, Craig Scherber and Associates. He asked me to come before this commission and come directly from a trial in outstate Minnesota, and I agreed to do it, and I'm worried. I'm worried about where we're at with this commission. I wanted to tell you why. I'm worried that we are on a collision course, that the actions taken tonight, if you do accept the staff report, and you do recommend to the city council to deny this application, we will appear before the city council at the next meeting when it's brought up for business. And if the city council follows the staff and any recommendation to deny the application, there will be a lawsuit. And that's a hard thing to say. And there's never a good way of trying to make friends when you tell them that the consequence of a disagreement is a lawsuit. I'm going to constrain my comments to try to explain about 3 or 4 fundamental issues that I see that need to be taken into account by this commission before making a decision. And I hope that you do reject the staff report and that you do approve the application. And I'll make sure to make my points and follow your lead that we can disagree with each other without being disagreeable. So I'll make sure to do that. For more than a generation, since 1992, the Minnesota Court of Appeals has ruled that you cannot arbitrarily enact an interim moratorium to delay or prevent a single project. I mean, that case law has been around for so long, that's even before I became a lawyer. Not by much, but I became a lawyer in 1994, and the Minnesota Court of Appeals has said that in the Medical Services versus City of Savage case from the Court of Appeals in 1992. That case will guide how a district court reviews this case going forward. Craig Scherber and his company submitted a timely application on October 17th, 2023. They were complete. The only thing that still had to be done was something that the city had to do, not that Craig Scherber had to do. And the city went forward and did its own feasibility study and concluded that we were complete as of March 14th, 2024. We were complete 5 months earlier, on October 17th, 2023. The important point about this is no municipality can say, we haven't done our job and done a feasibility study, so you're not complete as an applicant. That's not the law. And that delayed it by 5 months. And when the city finally said that we were complete on March 14th, they also said the feasibility study shows that we're compliant, that there are no concerns. But at the same time, the city issued its moratorium to not allow any additional construction and developments as they kind of relooked at their municipal ordinances. That is targeting. That's targeting one particular developer. In the NFL, that'd be yellow flag, unsportsmanlike conduct. And I hope that you look at that, the totality, that you can't just target one person and one applicant. At the time that the application was submitted by Mr. Scherber, City Ordinance 1070.070, City Ordinance 1070.070 did not have any statement about density requirements for commercial lots. And then the city amended its ordinance after that. That's another instance where, you know, the city is targeting one person. If there was any ambiguity in that ordinance, that ambiguity is construed against the city, not against the citizen. So the fact that we want 15 commercial lots, and you saw, they're all large sizes, minimum lot size is 2.5 acres, that doesn't matter, because there was no density restriction at the time that we submitted our application. And that's a really critical point. And when you combine the fact that we complied with the city ordinance and we complied, and our application was complete as of October 17th, everything that's happened going forward has been designed to target one guy, this guy. And I'm just asking you to think about the consequence of your vote that you're going to take. If you vote to adopt the staff report, if you vote to sign the resolution recommending to the city council that his application is denied, we'll be one step closer to that collision that I'm really trying to prevent. I don't want to have to sue the city of Corcoran. I don't want to have to do that. But there will be no opportunity to avoid that lawsuit if you adopt the staff report, if you sign the resolution, make a recommendation to the city council, and if the city council adopts your recommendation. I hope that you take a second look at this. I hope that you don't blindly accept the city planner's report. I have no negative comments to make about the city planner. None. Zero. The city is wrong. The city is simply wrong on 3 key issues. We were complete in our application as of October 17th, not March 14th. The city ordinance 1070.070 had no density restriction for commercial lots at the time we made our application. And 3, that really important 1992 Minnesota Court of Appeals case. You can't target, you can't bully one citizen and one applicant. And I hope that you're listening about the consequences and the gravity of the decision that you have to make, because I don't want to have a lawsuit. Please approve our application, reject the staff report, don't sign that recommendation. Send us to the city council, and we'll explain to the city council why he should be able to proceed with the 15 commercial lots and 4 residential lots. And none of those 4 residential lots will be built by him. Thank you for your attention. I tried to keep it within 5 minutes.
And I gave you a little leeway. It's okay. Thank you.
I just appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion and to try to avoid a lawsuit.
Thank you. Do we have another card?
I do not have any other cards.
Okay, so at this time, we've gotten through the individuals who filled out a comment card, so we are going to open it up to anyone else who's here in person and would like to come up to the podium with either a question or a comment regarding this application. And just a reminder, please, to state your name and address for the record.
My name's David Bethke.
Oh, you can wait till you get to the microphone, because
My
then,
name's David Bethke. I live on Rush Creek Boulevard. I'm here more in solidarity with my neighbors. I obviously don't live next to the 4 lots that you're not gonna build. And I would like to comment in the sense that I wonder if there's been any consideration to traffic. There's 15, I don't know if I read it right, 15 parking spots per commercial lot. Sounds like a lot of traffic on 30, and I know we don't have any control, I'm assuming we don't have control over Hennepin County Road 30 and stoplights and the noise, pollution that goes with it. I think you all got Kevin Dale's letter, he's not here, he had to go to a wedding that he couldn't get out of. So my concerns are similar to his. Again, I don't live right next to that property, but I find it very disconcerting that I know these people don't want to sue Corcoran, and I think the accusation's been made that you're standing up against this individual, where I think you're protecting the residents more, and I'd like to see that. And with that, I thank you.
thank you. And thank you for drawing our attention. We did all receive the comments made by Kevin and Karen Dale. They've been at the dais for each one of us, so we do have their comments, and it will be included in the packet that goes to City Council, and it is it's a matter of public record, so you guys can see that as well at the packet that will be given to council. So thank you for reminding me. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, Tim Cruz, 23, went on County Road 30, and I live right there where the easement is, going down the fence line, which Frank Larkin told me, one of the best mayors of Corcoran, told me years and years ago, Corcoran bought that easement, they got that lots right in between my house and the house behind there. And I'm not really rightly sure, is the residential gonna be built in them lots right between my house and the house behind mine? And they're gonna come down in that easement and build a road that have been taken care of for 39 years, cutting the trees down that were dead, and which is a wind block for my house. And I know my good friend Steve, that I've known for a long time, and he died, that owned that land, and his wife sold it. Steve would never let this happen, and I don't want it to happen. 39 years. Take that into consideration for all the neighbors around, please.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
Hi there, my name is Denise Lau, I live off of Rush Creek Boulevard. I guess my main thing is, what happens with all of that water, what happens with all of that water, with all the commercial lots, where does that water go? Rush Creek, if you guys have ever seen it, it's already overflowing. What happens with all that runoff, if that's been taken into consideration? And then I just want to clarify, where does that road come through? Will that impact Rush Creek Boulevard? Sorry, I hate this.
You're doing great.
And I just, it really impacts all of us. We moved out to Corcoran to keep it, because we love Corcoran how it is. This is Corcoran, it's not developed, and we want to keep it that way. And I don't want to see that impacted. I guess my biggest thing, like I said, is will that road go through Rush Creek Boulevard, or will that stay? Will our road stay as a cul-de-sac? So but the water is the main thing, and all of us residents we do not want this to happen. So please stand up for us and protect Corcoran. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. State your name and address just as a reminder.
Rick Miller, Rush Creek Boulevard. To Denise's point, when they added that development in Birchville and the runoff that came in, the water in that, just in that little development started coming down the ditches, went into the culverts and flooded their property, flooded Ray's property, flooded everybody's property, and it went up from there. So that runoff that she's talking about is not a small thing, and if there's not, it sounds like the development is still septic, it's still all this other stuff. And I'll be honest, thank God it's not city hookup, because Lord knows where that's going with taxes and everything else. So that is a huge concern. From a time frame perspective, I'm not exactly sure what this looks like. First thing, my only question, I shouldn't say it, but when you went and asked about potential plots or density, did you ask it, or they didn't have one? Was it a loophole to go in and put something in if there wasn't something already stated? Or after the fact, you guys came in after the fact and said there's a commercial density restriction. Did you ask, hey, is there commercial density restriction?
No, thank you, I appreciate it.
I'm just asking, because, yellow flag, unswordsmanlike conduct, but if I've got a question, asked the question, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, I'm not saying, but
I appreciate the question. We just don't want to, during the public comment opportunity, do a back and forth. But we have made note of all of the questions, so I appreciate you asking. But at this point in time,
I'm just curious, it's just a point, because everybody's looking for a potential loophole on things to get in. And I, hey, development, I'm not against it, the whole 9 yards in a lot of cases, but when it's not in my backyard, and is when people start speaking, so.
I think at this point in time, just regarding the framework of the question, not necessarily having a specific answer that would be discussed at this point, we would probably mark it down as a concern. I guess you could direct me if but I think that's how we'd handle it at this point in time. If that feels,
Yeah, no,
okay.
just a point.
I appreciate the comments. Is there anyone else?
Hi, I'm Michael Kane, 20913 County Road 10. We own the property to the south of that development, and our water drains from there under 30 down that grass waterway. So I'm just worried if they break back that up, then we're gonna be flooded to the south, so unless they somehow they can get that water out, because we got water coming from behind Dobozinski's comes through ours down, so. That's a big problem. We don't want swamps all over the place, so. We still farmers, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who wants to come and make comment regarding this application?
Could I make one more comment? It's more a statement.
Oh, it's okay. Wait until you get to the microphone, just because the microphone helps the
Yeah, my
minutes
name's
being
David,
recorded.
and I live on Rush Creek Boulevard. It's more a statement, and I think in my area there, it's easier the second time, I'm not as nervous. On Rush Creek Boulevard, we're kind of starting to feel like, maybe like a doormat of Corcoran. We're an older neighborhood. We have been there, I've been there 42 years, Diana 43, 39. I mean, we got a couple hundred years in that neighborhood. We used to vote in Kane Road in a wooden building there. I mean, we've been in the neighborhood for a while, so we really want you to concern this, excuse me, to really look into this and don't fall threat to a lawsuit. And that's the comment that I'd like to make. We feel we need some kind of protection here. I mean, we don't want these issues to go down, right? Like I say, I'm here in solidarity for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know you're good part.
Okay, and so just a reminder that, because I know it is, the issues feel very personal. You live in these neighborhoods, but I just want to remind you that we don't want to have a conversation in the audience because it's super distracting for us to be able to stick to the agenda. Thank you. We just want to minimize distractions so that we're able to make it through the process. But I appreciate everybody's input and certainly your participation tonight. Is there anybody else who wants to make a public comment opportunity? Okay, so then at this point in time, I will entertain a motion for us to close the public hearing. Someone want to make that motion?
I'll motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No one is opposed. So at this point in time, what we're going to do is give staff the opportunity to address questions. I think that if we were to find, buckets, and then if there are any that the applicant specifically needs to address, but I think most of them are staff, because it's water, traffic, and then the question regarding the Rush Creek Boulevard remaining a cul-de-sac. So if we want to ask, so I will,
Sure, why don't you take those ones, I can get your other ones.
Okay. Yeah, I can address a couple of those. So I'll start with the stormwater one. I guess I'll go in buckets. For the stormwater one and then the drainage for the site, when the site develops, whether it looks like this or something else, it will be required to essentially have a net zero for stormwater, which means anything happening currently today on the site in terms of stormwater has to be maintained on this site. On the plan that's shown on the screen right now, on the east side, kind of tucked in between the two residential lots on the northeast and the southeast, there's a stormwater basin. That will be the area where all the stormwater will be collected. There's a series, and this is getting into like plan details, but there's a series of stormwater pipes that would feed into that basin that would catch the stormwater as it, essentially as it rains, it would collect it from the various areas of the site as it's developed. The city engineer did review this plan, and there are comments in here included based on their review to make sure they comply with all the regulations and standards for stormwater. So that's how it would get taken care of with the development. Let's see, what was it?
the question about the Rush Creek Boulevard remaining a cul-de-sac, or was that road A?
Yep. And I hear, so the stormwater basin, the purpose of a stormwater basin is for it to infiltrate into the ground, so no water would leave that basin, it would infiltrate into the underlying soils. So there'd be no water that would leave that site other than through stormwater infrastructure, concrete infrastructure that's under the ground. So that's how that would get taken care of. As far as Rush Creek Boulevard, there's no plans to extend or connect Rush Creek Boulevard to this development or anything that happens here. So Rush Creek Boulevard would remain as it is today currently. The only streets proposed as part of this application are shown on the screen here, which is a north-south connection. The access from County Road 30 is in the bottom right corner and indicated in red there. That street would extend up and provide a future connection for the property to the north when if that develops. And then there are two additional streets that provide access. They're called Street B and C on the plans, which is B is the one running east and west, and C is the one that ends in a dead-end cul-de-sac that does the fish hook. So that's how the streets would lay out, but there is no connection to Rush Creek Boulevard. Let's see what stormwater.
Last was just, oh.
Down the easement to get that lamp.
So I think at this point, what's gonna be helpful is to give them the opportunity to address the questions. And if you have specific questions that aren't addressed after the meeting is completed, then you can send in an email. And the reason I say that is right now, what he's indicating is plan details are usually contingent upon the first issue, which is in order for this to be at the site plan approval, there have to be two other steps that would happen. Am I saying that? So it would have to, one, be, have a comprehensive plan amendment made, that would have to be approved, and then a rezoning would have to be approved before this site plan would be approved. So right now, like the questions that we're getting are focusing on some of the detail stuff. And we have to first look at, will the first two things be approved? Because if they are not approved, then the site plan will not be approved as well. Does that, okay, so we're just gonna give them a question to finish, or give them the opportunity to finish addressing the questions. And then if after the meeting you still have questions, certainly send in your emails, make sure that they are addressed. And I know that water is a big concern. The last one, I believe, was traffic.
Yep, so there was a feasibility study performed as part of the application. That feasibility study looked at specifically traffic and the proposed impact that the trips generated from the proposed uses, so the commercial lots plus the residential lots, would have on County Road 30 as part of an overall traffic study. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm not gonna speak to the individual study and how they go about collecting the data and everything like that. But as far as what the ultimate conclusion was essentially that that an increased traffic from those commercial lots and the residential lots warranted turn lanes. So when I was talking about some of the conditions on here, there will be a left-bound turn lane and a right-bound turn lane to enter the site from, so as you're traveling from east to west, there will be a right-bound turn lane, and as you're traveling from west to east, there will be a left-bound turn lane to enter into this site to reduce traffic conflicts because of the traffic that this would generate. I would note too that the feasibility study was included as part of the packet that was posted on the website, and that's under review here tonight. So if you want to, you can take a look at that if there are any specific questions on it too. I would encourage you to reach out to staff. I'm not the appropriate person to talk in detail about traffic, but I do know what the conclusions made by the person who performs the study were.
And someone alluded to it earlier as well, but that is a county road, so that does go through the county. And it's not necessarily owned by the city, so to address that as well. Is there anything?
Madam Chair, it's up to you what other comments you'd want me to address at this time, or if you want to, it's up to you and the commission.
I think at this point in time, we have addressed the majority of the questions. We've noted the concerns. And so at this point in time, I would like to open it up to the other commissioners to have the opportunity to ask their questions, either for staff or for the applicant. And if you don't have questions, then to begin to make your discussion. So is there somebody who would like to lead?
I guess my biggest question is, as far as the zoning amendment for the rural commercial, transitional rural commercial, and the development rights for these two properties, from my understanding, and I'm fairly new to the council, but my understanding is it remained the way it was with development rights for commercial property in the rural district.
Correct. So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Kazaki, the development rights shown on this property prior to the moratorium was 7 development rights, and that's how many development rights remain on there today. As far as the other components, there is a change in the boundary that this application is showing between the rural commercial versus the rural residential, so that's why the comprehensive plan amendment would be part of it. And then the rezoning component would follow that guiding.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far back this map goes before it was digitized, but this shows 7 development rights on it.
Correct. Yep. So that is the most historical map that we have. So my understanding is, I don't know exactly how far back it goes myself, but I do know that it was basically updated, handwritten through the years, and finally in 2002 we digitized it to make it much easier to administer the program.
So this was probably in place at the time any of these applications went into effect.
Correct.
Regardless of the time frame between March and October. I guess my other comment is on, this is real close to 19 on 30, that's a T in the road. It's already kind of an odd intersection. They've kind of made a weird little right-hand lane on County Road 19 so that traffic coming off 30 and taking a right turn and going north can kind of go into that lane and then get up to speed and merge in with traffic on 19. It backs up during rush hour, possibly as far as the entrance to this planned development. People may have a hard time getting in and out of there. I mean, there's turn lanes, so going into it is probably okay. They might have a harder time getting out of it. It's a county road, both are county roads, so I don't know what Hennepin County has in mind for that intersection, but hopefully at some point they put in a roundabout or some kind of a traffic control there, because if we're gonna start developing out here, especially with the density that close to that intersection, that very well could be a problem. There was a traffic report done here, and they seem to think that everything was fine there?
Yeah, I can just add that it was an infrastructure feasibility study, so as part of that, they do look at traffic, and it's basically looking at what based on the plan that's submitted, what infrastructure would be needed to support it. And so, and is there anything you wanted to add on top of that?
I would just say that as part of the findings of that study done, there were no improvements suggested to the intersection of County Road 19 and 30 because of this project. That doesn't address any underlying traffic issues already existing today. It's only how this project would affect the traffic on 19 and 30.
Sure. Thank you.
How about a roundabout in that area?
I really appreciate everybody's willingness to be here tonight, but I'm going to have to ask you to keep your comments to yourself at this point in time because we've closed the public hearing. Okay, is there anybody else who has questions for staff or questions for the applicant as we continue our discussion?
I have a question for staff. And can you talk a little bit about the discrepancy that the gentleman mentioned? Can you talk to that a little bit?
I certainly can, Madam Chair and Commissioner Hargreaves. Yes, there is quite a bit of history on this application. They actually originally submitted in 2022, and at that time we did notify them that a infrastructure feasibility study was needed. It's necessary for nearly every project in the city because we don't have existing infrastructure. Even Domino's, where there is existing infrastructure, had to go through a small feasibility study to look at traffic. So that is a common part of our practice, and they were notified that in 2022 when they originally submitted, but then they later withdrew that application. So then in 2023, without any additional steps taken by the applicant to work with staff and to work on that feasibility study, they resubmitted the same application. They were notified in October with an incomplete letter that included 11 items. So it was not just the infrastructure feasibility study, it was other items such as the landscaping plan, basic parts of our preliminary plat proposal, our approval list were not included in that application, and they were notified. And there was limited discussion with staff until about January, at which point the conversations with the city administrator led to the applicant moving forward with a concept plan, which is again part of a typical process, particularly when we're talking about anything with city discretion, such as a comprehensive plan amendment or rezoning. So the application was paused in January in terms of moving forward with it, and that was based off a letter we received from the applicant team to pause it and move forward with a concept plan, which we did. And then at that time, the feasibility study was also paused as part of that. We had reached out and as the city and had asked for information to be able to complete the feasibility study that had not been submitted, and then at that point it just was paused altogether. And then in February, that was when the concept plan was reviewed, and the direction at that time was that in terms of council direction to staff, was that they wanted to reevaluate the development rights program. It wasn't necessarily to pick on him. There was actually some desire stated at the meeting that potentially there could be some openness moving away from development rights programs in the rural commercial. However, the city does have historical cases where we have applied the development rights to commercial uses, including our own public works building. When that was rezoned to allow for the public works building, we had bought a development right and then used that to create that use. So and then there was the Dobozinski subdivision was a rural commercial subdivision that used the development rights. So there was historical precedent that we have placed that this was what was intended. And then we were at March, that was when the moratorium was proposed. At that point, the application still was not complete. After the applicant was notified of the moratorium, they did try to submit a complete application while the infrastructure feasibility study was still ongoing. And even then, we were still waiting on information on the septic sites, which is still a reason for it to be incomplete. So it was incomplete until after the moratorium was adopted. So and then state statute does say that the moratorium only by right exempts projects with preliminary approval, which this is not a project that had received preliminary approval. So I hope that provides a bit more direction or a bit more feedback as to the background on that. It wasn't intended to specifically only apply to this site. The moratorium was a chance to review the development rights and how we apply it in all of our rural commercial and transitional rural commercial districts. It was a part of our larger commercial industrial update discussion. And then I would say the adopted ordinance also clarified things for how it gets applied in rural residential districts as well. So the end result was to really clean up the program and make it very clear as to how it has been applied and how it will continue to be applied.
I do have another question for the applicant, if I may.
Sure.
It seems to me that you gentlemen put together a lot of work on this
I've been at this
project.
for 4 years. If you read the code before they put the amendment or change the code, it says no.
I'm sorry, I'm being reminded that I need to ask you to go to the mic just because then when they're doing the minutes after the fact, we can make sure that we hear you. Thank you so much.
Read the code before they changed it. It had nothing about density. The only thing it mentioned was 2.5 acre lots. What am I to follow but the code? That's the law. I'm not supposed to be a developer. I'm not supposed to be, a planner or an attorney to read the code. It's for the common man. What can I do with my piece of property? And for 4 years, the staff has been fighting. It's like, no, you can't. It's building rights. Well, where does it say it in the code? It doesn't say it. Well, that's what we mean. Well, that's your problem, not mine. I followed the code. And I presented it, and then I withdrew it because I was getting nowhere. And then the second time, it's like, okay, this is the route I'm going to take. The code's the code. I'm going forward. And then Kendra kept throwing 11 different things why it wasn't complete. We just kept, it was just like whack-a-mole. And so, call it incomplete and then put a moratorium on and then change the code on it. You can't do that. The law, just like the speed limit outside, case law is the law. Many judges have ruled on this already. You can't put a moratorium on when there's an application. They've done it. You can't change the code when there's an application. They've done it. That's why I hired an attorney.
So I have another question. When you say code, you're referring to the city ordinance,
The
correct?
city ordinance, the city code.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Do you have some questions, Commissioner Lind, or
I do.
comments you want to make?
I wanted to, if you had any on it. Okay. Staff, how long have we had our building rights program in this city?
Since the 1980s, early 1980s.
Okay. And at this stage in the process, would it be normally expected to see like the trail easements or what, like a couple of the things that were flagged as missing? Would that be expected to be in this plan at this stage, or?
So it
Not
isn't
necessarily.
uncommon for that to be handled as a condition of approval, and it really would be the final plat where that would need to be absolutely a part of the application. So it would say that it's typically when you have a collaborative environment, yes, you would have revised plans that would include some of that information. But that isn't necessarily, that is something that can be handled as a condition of approval.
Okay. Can I state an opinion?
Absolutely, it's time for
Okay.
discussion and questions.
Great. Well, it's been a great evening to hear from everyone, so appreciate that. I think the Planning Commission's duty is to conduct due diligence and have responsibility of looking at our plans and of looking at the facts that's provided by staff, and to not act on pressure or threats. And I think based on everything that we've read, heard, this application does lack some components that would, I think, provide that comfortability to the community that we're looking for this type of change to our comprehensive plan amendment, including trails, adequate parking, thoughtful transition between land uses, as well as, I think the lack of cooperation that's been demonstrated is concerning in this application. So for those reasons, as well as the building rights program certainly not being respected in this application and needing to be revised, which has been in place. I'm not going to get into any of those arguments. That's for lawyers to do. But I recommend moving forward with the draft resolution that is put forward tonight.
And to clarify, are you making a motion or are you making a recommendation at this point in time?
I'd love to
stating
hear
your
from my
place?
colleagues.
Okay.
Yep.
I I have been around long enough in terms of following the process in the application, so it's something I am familiar with. And so I don't have additional questions. I think that staff and I believe the applicant has done a thorough job in presenting the issue. So at this point in time, I would entertain, if no one else has additional comments, I would entertain a motion that anyone is.
I have additional comments.
Yep, go for it.
Is it correct that our city code did not state density requirements? That maybe the only place that was on a handwritten map, and he was unaware of the density requirements?
So, Chair, I'm sorry, Chair and Commissioner Kazicki, where development rights are discussed in the code, and it was in rural residential district, and it said in that portion of code that the development rights applied to residential and non-residential units. Now, there are other portions of the code that were contradictory, but it also, but if you read those codes and then looked at the map where properties that were zoned rural commercial also had development rights, that was where we landed on that. So that was part of what needed to get cleaned up, which we took the time to do and make sure that was clear to everybody moving forward.
It also sounds like maybe there wasn't a lot of communication happening between the developer and the city.
There was communication since 2022. I think at this point, the opinions have been clear, and this is where we're at.
I have a question. Can I make another question? For staff. So if the motion is made to support the recommendation of the city, what happens when it goes to the town council? Or will it go to the town council?
It
does,
would.
Yeah, they're the
Yep.
ones that make the final decision.
Yeah.
This is the recommendation. So it would go to city council for a final decision, and they'll be able to say if they disagree with that recommendation or if they agree, and it would go from there.
Okay, so at that point, the applicant would have would have the opportunity to state their case, correct?
The applicant has had their case, so typically when staff and planning, our practice as a city, when staff and the planning commission are on the same page in terms of the recommendation, it does go on consent because our city council agendas are overloaded. However, there's an open forum time. He has a chance to communicate in the meantime via email. I know he has been in communication with our city council members. Our city council members are diligent in watching these meetings and discussing these meetings with staff, so they are very aware of what's being presented tonight, and they can always choose to pull from the consent agenda if they feel that that's appropriate.
Okay, so okay, that answered my question. Thank you very much.
So just one more question for me. It seems that the developer was aware of the development rights at the time he submitted his plan for approval.
Yes, and staff has urged a concept plan from our very initial meetings to start this conversation. Because even under their interpretation, the development rates shown in the residential don't line up, because even if we were to accept the interpretation that there's 7 residential, that the development rates are only to be applied to the residential lots, showing 14 acres of residential, then at most that'd be 2 residential lots. So we needed to figure out, okay, if that's true, then what happens to the development rates shown on the map if it only applies to commercial lots? So there were a number of questions that needed to be figured out. And like I said, when the moratorium was initially adopted, it wasn't necessarily with the intent to say that we are going to continue this pathway. It was a chance to review whether or not we wanted to do that, and there was public outreach as part of it. There was a study that was done. There was communication with the Planning Commission on determining what would be best for our rural commercial area and our rural area overall.
Thank you.
So I do have one question.
Absolutely.
Was the applicant aware of the moratorium when that decision was made, and
Yes.
did the city notify that?
Yes, we notified the applicant team of the public hearing for the moratorium. They received an emailed correspondence and they confirmed receipt.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point in time, I will make a motion to approve the recommendation for denial of the comprehensive plan amendment, the rezoning, and the preliminary plat for City File 23-027. And just to be clear, that was making a motion. Is there anyone who is willing to second?
I will second the motion.
And all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Say nay. Okay. So that is the recommendation that will go forth to City Council.
Madam Chair, I never heard what all of the votes were. I think there was 2 who voted in favor. I didn't hear each.
Sure, we can call a revote. So if you guys could just state your name. Gosh,
a roll
is that,
call vote,
okay,
yeah.
I was like, can we do a roll call vote? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do a roll call vote. The motion was made by Commissioner Brummond. It was seconded by,
Commissioner Lind?
and then Commissioner Yang, how do you vote? Yay or nay?
Could you repeat that?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
What the motion before us is for the recommendation for denial of the comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, and preliminary plat for the 3019 edition. And so we're just asking if you're voting in favor of the recommendation for denial or if you are opposed to the recommendation for denial.
I vote in favor.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Hargreaves
Favor?
and Commissioner Kozicki.
Yay.
Okay. Again, if anyone has additional questions that were not addressed, feel free to email and reach out with your questions. And I just want to thank everybody for your respect for the process and the evening. So appreciate you willing to follow the rules of decorum. And with that, we are going to move on to other business. So if there's anything that staff has for us in the planning project update or just anything in general.
I
Nope.
don't have anything, but let me know if you have any questions.
Sure. The only planning project question that I have and is regarding the storage unit that's going in right off of Highway 55 before Greenfield. I drove by it and it says that it's storage and shed. And it's promoting itself as being a self-storage and a warehouse. And so I don't remember that being something that was talked about or discussed during any of the application process in terms of, I guess my assumption is when I hear warehouse, I think someone is working on site. And I know that that's something we were concerned about regarding storage. So I'm just wondering if I missed something.
No, Madam Chair, you did not miss something. It's just supposed to be storage units. They're not supposed to be using it as a workspace. So the idea would be that they might have equipment there, they might have vehicles there, so it's very possible that they need to pick something up if it's like a contractor that's using it as a storage space, but they're not supposed to be using it as an office or a repair facility or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. So how do we, how do we handle that?
Well, Kendra is the planner that worked on that project, so it is on my to-do list to discuss. with her when
Okay,
she gets
so I'm
back.
not the only one who noticed it and sort of saw a red
No,
flag.
you are not
Okay,
the only one
awesome.
that has
Well, I'm glad that that's been brought to everybody's attention because I know that public safety's concern regarding self-storage was sort of the use and some of the public safety issues that can arise from that. Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear it. Does anybody else have any questions regarding any of the projects that are taking place?
Yes, I do.
Go for it.
There was a town council work session, was there the last,
Yes, there was.
What?
And I was there.
you were there?
Yes.
What?
It was just a work session before the last council meeting,
Oh,
which is common. There's work sessions that are commonly held before council meetings sometimes from like 5:30 to 7.
Was it good?
You know what, this is what I will say is they are available for you to view via Zoom on the
Okay.
city website. And so if it is a topic that is of interest to you, I would recommend going back. The work session was regarding the business park.
Yes.
The only area in the city zone for the business park. So,
Was
yes.
was it a collaboration between planning and council or just
No,
council?
no, it's just a council work
Okay.
session. Good question.
So there's not going to be anything that is summarized and put out, so we have to go to the,
I believe so, yes, because, well, I mean, meeting minutes from the work sessions are put together, and they were behind for a period of time due to some issues with the technology and then city, but they are all caught up. So you could certainly reference the past meeting minutes once they're available. I believe it's usually give it like a month. But if that doesn't summarize it adequately for you, then I would recommend going back to view. Yep. Anybody else? Okay, and so again, just a reminder, touching on the liaison calendar, that it is optional. And if you choose to participate, your presence is not required, but you would not be receiving your packets, so, or the packets, because they're no longer your packets. So if you wanted to know what was on the agenda or whatnot, you can just pull it up via the city website. And so with that being said, if nobody else has anything, well, I guess, I'm sorry, I skipped right over the city council report. So we would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions of Councilmember Varenkamp, who's here with us tonight, or if you have anything you would like to let the commissioners know.
Great job this evening on all of your thoughts, comments, everything you had. They are listened to as Chair mentioned and such. Thank you, neighbors and everybody. If you have questions, you can reach out to me also on this. I'm one of your neighbors. I live down on Bechtold Road, so I'm not far away. Across from Sherburne Dairy Farm. But if you guys got questions, Peter, you had questions about that work session and such. It was an open thing. They aren't closed. It was open, and it was basically they came with the same concept as they did initially. And we had already given them an answer on that of not what we were looking for. And it turned out we need to spend more time on that, and they do too. And not both sides were listening. We weren't listening to them, they weren't listening to us, because we'd already told them we didn't like it. Corinne, if I'm saying it right.
Yeah, I feel like.
But it's tough. We've got existing residents in our town that have been here for a long, long time. And to change stuff up and do things, it's not something that's gonna easily be done anywhere, but in that general vicinity, those plans and such had been there for quite some time. And we're doing what we think is right per our existing citizens and stuff. So, any specific question off of that, Peter, or no?
no, I do have another question. Is there any way that the planning commissioners can somehow get involved? You know, like what transpired tonight. It kind of all came on one.
You can come, if you look at the open work sessions, all those things,
Okay.
you can come and participate,
Okay.
make comments then, okay? To involve the planning commission, and Natalie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, on a concept that they're coming to the council asking what we think initially, that it's a step to reduce costs and to stick all kinds of money into all of the work you just mentioned, Peter, initially. In other words, do we have your ear? What is your input? And then we'll go back, take that information, and then maybe submit a plat, or a preliminary plat, and go through the planning commission. You guys get to make comments, and then they come to us with your recommendations and stuff. So that's it. I know you are a Bellwether resident. Great neighborhood, great folks up there, a lot of great input and such, and we're listening to everybody, so.
It's not just because I'm a Bellwether resident.
No, I know, it's not just you, but all of you guys, a breath of everybody in our community is on the planning commission and making recommendations for anything that's coming to us, it's nice to have the perception or the ideas from everybody in their neighborhood, not just focused neighborhoods and stuff. So
I mean, it's all,
it's
yeah,
great.
I appreciate that. It's
It's
also very nice to have the people from the community come to these meetings.
So it's huge.
So we can hear them.
It's
So that's-
huge. And in the past, a lot of folks have probably felt they had not been listened to. The last 3 years I've been on the council, that has been one of my focus, of listening to anybody that calls, anybody that leaves me a message and stuff. I do get back to them on their concerns and thoughts and stuff. But again, everybody is part of this decision and such. The 5 elected officials up there are kind of making that final call. So.
That's what I was going to say, is involve yourself early and often.
Yes.
And when you go, just because you don't go in a liaison capacity any longer, you go as a citizen and you're still able to make as much public comment. You're just making it on behalf of yourself rather than the planning commission. But oftentimes I'll scan just to see what the concept plans are, because concept plans are never a part of the consent agenda. They're always something that gets timed, and that is an opportunity to see like what is being thought about. That's the preliminary step to anything, a formal application being drawn up that would come before the planning commission. So I know I used to appreciate the liaison calendar, because then it was like I sort of knew that someone else was going to be there, and then I could touch base the next month and be like, so did you hear anything? And now it just requires me to pay a little bit more attention, unless we all want to still collaboratively, cover those, whatever. But yeah, that's my last comment, I guess, is that our recommendation right now was for the application not to go through, but the landowner does have development rights. And so if it is something that is of importance to you, just continue to watch what happens, not because we want to, pitchfork and axes against development, but because your feedback early and often can help shape the feedback. Whereas coming along later in the process sometimes is a little bit harder. So at this point in time, I will entertain a motion for us to adjourn tonight's meeting. Is there anyone willing to make that motion? Not all at once. Come on, guys.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Is there somebody who will second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor loudly say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.